So the last thing I want to do before I put a couple coats of white paint over this is to just give it a little more of a weathered look. And what I'm going to use is just a basic hammer. I have this tiny little ball peen hammer. And then I made this up with just a piece of cable and washers and different pieces that I have in the shop. And I'm just going to put a little bit of texturing in this with these. So this is an experiment. You're kind of I guess just doing a look that you like yourself. If you look at this piece here, and if I can get the light right on this, you can see how this one's probably better. Just a little bit of light texturing here. In here where it's hit a couple of times here and here, and the paint sticks in there when you sand it away, just to make it look like it's a little bit old and weathered. And so if it does get a dent, it looks like it, which inevitably will, it will just look natural. You'll notice here that one of my plugs, where I drilled out a 3/4 inch Forstner bit hole, has raised up a little bit. That doesn't really bother me. So it just looks like one of those plugs, kind of a Dutchman in there to take out some of that darker grain so it doesn't stain back through. So you'll like what you like in your chair, and this doesn't really bother me, and I like a little bit of that texturing. I suppose if you wanted to, you could keep this thing perfectly smooth, sand everything perfectly smooth, and paint it so it was nice and near perfect. But I don't care for that look, so I'm going to try this. So I guess a little bit probably goes a long way here. So and I always try for random. So a little bit with that hammer. A little bit with that hammer, and then a little bit with that, whatever you call this thing, the keychain thing. So you can see a little bit of denting in here. One thing I did find when I did my prototype is the prototype looked like this, and the paint that I put on here, I put on 2 coats. It's so thick it really fills in a lot of these dents, so I think that's a good thing too. But it's kind of the look I'm going for, more of a distressed, I guess. So it fits the style of our house, and my wife really liked that when I showed her the mock-up here. Alright, so I'll do this to the entire chair, and then put a couple coats of white paint on it and sand it down. Well, we'll take it from there. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. The only thing really left after I paint this, or distress it, paint it, is to put the seats in. And cut the cardboard or the plywood for the seats, and then of course the whole cushion and upholstery process, but we'll get to that later. Alright, so I'm ready to put the paint on. I've distressed the whole chair, just kind of wiped it off a little bit, and ready to go. I'm going to use, I really like this for our house, and we painted a fireplace like this, and we painted some chairs this way. So this is a satin, and yeah, you could go with semi-gloss, gloss if you wanted to. I think the style of the chair, kind of distressed, weathered, looks like maybe it has been around for a while. The satin will look better, won't have quite as much of a sheen. And then we like this really nice color. It's called Simplified White. It's not a super bright white. It has a touch of kind of a gray to it, which I think gives it a nice look. But anyway, this is just your basic interior latex paint. So find yourself a good brush. This is a 2-inch brush. And I'm going to put a couple of coats on this before I do any of the sanding. So it doesn't have to be too pretty, but make it one of your best paint jobs, I guess. Make sure you get into all those little crevices. Like anything else, try not to overwork it, and I finish with a nice even stroke. I don't know, kind of that's about it for the painting. This is kind of the wind down part here for me, where you just get to do the simple things, and we'll see if it holds up. But those little plugs you can't even see. Some you'll be able to see, and I get that, but we'll take what I can get. We'll be happy to have these chairs, and they fit our budget a lot better too. Just going to buy $100 worth of lumber over at the home center and making them. Alright, so I'll continue painting this and I'll be back. Alright, just finishing up the first coat here, and we'll let it dry. I usually let it dry overnight, 24 hours or so. And then I'll do a second coat. I'm going to wait till I do both coats and let them dry overnight before I do any sanding. Try and make these little fleur, I guess not fleur-de-lis, these little leaf carvings. Try and make those not pronounced, but so we can still see them. So I'll put the, after this coat dries for 24 hours, I will lightly sand it. It's probably about 150 grit sandpaper, and just to knock down any of the grain that's lifted by the water-based paint, and smooth it out a little bit. And then I'll put the second coat on. You can already see that a lot of the little dings and distressing that I did with the 2 different hammers and that little keychain full of washers, you can already see that that really has been downplayed quite a bit, and it's harder to see after the paint. After 2 coats of this thick paint, it's even harder to see. So I know when you first do it, sometimes you think, wow, this looks really, really pronounced, but it tends to fade away and get minimized once you put a couple coats of this paint on. Alright, I have the second coat of white paint on, and I gave it a light sanding in between, and this paint is pretty thick, so it covers really well, but 2 coats is going to be more than enough. So I'm going to take, just have a block of walnut here and some 60 grit sandpaper, and just going to give it a little bit of distressing. Not too much. You can see that the those plane marks, when I planed it this way and I didn't use a router, it leaves kind of ridges on there that this catches. I kind of like the feel of that. So I'll have to sand this to take some of the paint off with a 60 grit, and then I'll hit it again with like probably about 150 or 220 grit before I put the Polycrylic on it. So usually with this distressing, I probably don't need to tell you, but a little bit goes a long way. So I'm just going to do the top edges. That's usually what would be bumped when something is hit. I think you can see that. That looks, I think that's probably enough. I don't want to put too much on the front here. My thought with the carvings here was to maybe paint them black, but I'm tempted to just leave them white like this and let the shadow lines define them. I think I'll just try that. We'll see how that looks. Alright, so I'm going to keep distressing this. I am really happy with how the distressing, when I hit it with the hammer and the ball peen hammer and kind of that keychain full of washers, I like that. A lot of those are minimized by the 2 layers of really really thick paint. So I like the feel of that, especially over here. I think this looks nice. Over here this looks nice, kind of minimized. So I'll do the rest of this and then we'll put some polyacrylic on it and then it will be done. This is a good example of what I really like, and just by sanding some of it down so it looks rough here, a little bit up here, I found that using kind of a combination of a wood file, the file part, not the rasp part, on the edges, and then the block with the sandpaper, that's really all you need. And I like the feel and I like the look of that. There's a little bit more over here. So just to give it kind of a random pattern, but not too much. Randomness really is the key here to simulate that natural distressing. This is how the distressing looks on the side, and a few places I did the face of the boards, but pretty much everything else I left to a few of the angles. One of the sides where the little carving is and the third one back, I washed some of that off, or sanded some of that off, but tried to keep it kind of minimal. I'm really happy with how it's turning out. So I will continue to do this all the way around the chair. Here's a close-up of the kind of the front leg and one of the pieces with a carving on it, just to kind of show how I sanded some away, but that's all. I just wanted to show a close-up. We're on the final step here, and we're going to, well, the whole chair has been kind of distressed and then just lightly sanded over the 2 coats. And I'm going to apply, I like this water-based polycrylic from Minwax. So we're going to put probably 2 coats and see how that looks. We don't want it to look too heavy and kind of waxy looking, but 2 coats is usually pretty good. We have other things we put 2 coats on that are white and kind of the same thing painted, and surprisingly durable. Surprisingly, we have a kind of a shoe rack that we set our shoes on, and that thing has 2 coats of this, and it's extremely durable, extremely washable. So it's basically the same process. What I do like about the polyacrylic here is it's going to darken the pine just a little bit when you put it on. And I will like the look of that just to bring it out just a little bit. So 2 coats of this, do kind of a light sanding in between, and I guess when I'm done I'll show you the final product. Alright.